feel of it.
Yeah.
It's the brothers plus David. And then we'll keep it on until just a little bit of Carl's solo comes.
Because it's solo.
It's just, you know, and I think he's 15 here. But just the way he attacks the beginning of it here.
Everybody's learning how to come on a safari with me.
That band.
All right, welcome back to the In My Beach Boys Room podcast. I am Adam Schreiner. I am sitting here with Matthew Hartz, and we are going to get into another album analysis of Surfin' Safari today.
Yes.
In the last episode, we covered all the early stuff, not
an album,
not an album.
All the significant music they did before this first album.
So if you want to listen to that, make sure you check out the episode, the previous episode. And just real quick before we get into all this, we'll do the social media stuff, which it's mainly just YouTube. You can just search Matthew Hartz Music on YouTube, and it'll pop right up. And then the other one would be Facebook. Facebook is mainly the social media channel that Matthew uses.
Well, that and Instagram.
Instagram as well.
Yeah,
and you know, which essentially are tied together, so makes sense. Instagram, you can just search Matthew Hartz Music, and then for Facebook, just search Matthew Hartz. Look for a photo of a little kid with his brother and a banjo, right?
Yep.
And so that's how you can connect with us. Please like, subscribe, help us do all those things that grow the podcast and the channel. We always appreciate that. And with that being said, I think we can kind of we can pick up where we left off, because now we're moving into an actual record, not just...
And there's a little bit before we get to the actual record. And so all these little transition periods, and the reason we have to talk about them because lineup changes and things like that.
Like who's playing on what.
But so after they got the stuff recorded that we listened to yesterday, including some singles that were released and everything, Murray... I don't know if it was Murray or who made the connection with a man named Chuck Britz at Western Recorders, who not immediately, or well, yeah, he does immediately, but then there's a couple years before they get, or not a couple of years, it's a while before they get back with Chuck Britz. He becomes a major part of the Beach Boys story. But anyway, long story short on this is they record new version of Surfin' Safari. They record 409. I know there's Lonely Sea and Their Hearts Were Full of Spring and something else, but I'm not going to try to remember everything was on the demo, but this was the demo that Murray then took and shopped around and was turned down by a number of record companies, but Capitol, one of the biggest, finally signed him on this demo. And as a matter of fact, the Surfin' Safari and 409 they like so much, they just say, hey, we're just going to put that out as the single, even though it wasn't recorded here at Capitol.
Right,
you guys recorded it Western.
They didn't re-record it for this one.
But that's important, a little bit important to the story for the way those songs in particular sound compared to the rest of the album.
Which I did notice, actually, while listening to
this. But also, this is where they draft David Marks to come in, Carl's buddy, who's now I think 13, but has been jamming with Carl for a couple of years. They've been playing the guitars together, so he's going to come in and play rhythm guitar. So the lineup includes Dennis on a drum kit now. Okay. Now we've got not just a drum. Yeah. It's so. And we don't even know if it was Dennis on that single drum. We were just hoping it is. Yeah. Positive thinking.
Yeah.
But anyway, Dennis is playing a drum kit here. Brian's on bass, Carl on guitar, David on guitar. So we've got that lineup.
And Al is off in Michigan right now, correct?
I believe so.
Or
yeah. But he's just out of the picture for a while, but that's one of the things he's doing. The thing is at 13 years old, David, and you can listen to all the records, he does a phenomenal job. He went on to be an amazing musician too. Those guys just, you think it was just a family band that just like, wow, the neighbors and the friends just got involved and they just did it. It was a little bit of divine luck.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
these guys all were, I mean, David Marks goes on to be a scary musician.
Yeah, these aren't just ordinary 13. Yeah, 13
Yeah. So anyway,
kids,
here he just did a fantastic job. But so there, the demo gets made. They get signed to Capitol, and then so they go in to the Capitol Studios and make the rest of the record. Sans Surfin'. Surfin', they used the original Surfin' single, but they just sped it up a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So listen to the Surfin' Safari Surfin' and the original Surfin', and you go, oh wow, they sound younger. They said, yeah, because they sped it up, and the record companies did tricks like that all the time, And Murray actually had some of the early Beach Boys stuff sped up to make them sound younger.
Oh. Huh.
Yeah, believe it or not.
Interesting.
Anyway, we're getting in the weeds a little bit here.
Yeah.
So let's start talking about the album analysis just proper, right?
Okay.
So Surfin' Safari right out of the gate.
Right.
It is so crisp. And I say, I prefer the older version of this, but this is a great version, and especially just the thrilling sound of the guitars out of the gate and just Dennis's snare drum hit. Boom, let's go surfing now. Everybody's learning now. The ultimate, and this is punk rock to me. Also, Brian on the bass. We talked about bass lines in the last episode and some of the really funky, simple little things he did that were so different. But now it seems as though he's really decided on one line in particular for the faster songs, and it's 1, 3, 5, 6 is how you. That's even a little bit different than what you would hear for most bass lines for something like that. Most of it would be something like this.
Okay.
Or something, come back at this without coming back. When you hear something like that, let's see. There, you're just going. So it's a constant climb, I guess, is what you're. So it propels the tune. And I noticed that from the Surfin' Safari album on, for the first few albums on the faster tunes, that's the predominant bass line that he or either Al later on plays for the faster tunes. And I kind of think it's a little invention of theirs that just works really nicely. But let's talk about that Surfin' Safari tune just in general. It starts out with that intro, and we're in the key of A, but it starts out with the 5 chord, a E, which is real calm. Let's go surfing now. Then the 4, everybody's learning how. But then right here we get this is the 2 chord, not way crazy, but just the spot. It just hits you, and it already puts us way out of 3 chord territory. Even though the song is mostly a 3 chord tune, it gives it. There's a defining moment for it right in the intro, and it happens in the choruses too, right?
Okay.
So, and that's real punk too.
Yeah.
Or surfing now, everybody's learning how. Come on a safari with back to the 5. And even the rhythm guitar style, that's just the Chuck Berry where you're just playing a partial chord, and it's more about the rhythm and the palm muting technique.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, nice.
Anyway, I'll
get
off.
Can I play it so I can know that?
Yeah. Go ahead and play a little bit of it now.
Give me that kind of background.
And then let's also talk, because if the music things I want to talk about here is also one more thing, and that's Carl's solos. They're getting better and more refined all the time. But the idea that he uses for his solos, especially at this point in the game, is the one that we all use. It's a minor pentatonic scale thing. And doubling up parts of it and everything like that. But it's a real common tool. But just, man, he makes good use of it, and he uses it in different ways throughout the album, and you can see him exploring that idea. So that's something to think about too. But yeah, let's listen to a little bit of Surfin' Safari.
Let's go surfing now. Everybody's learning how. Come on a safari with me. Come on a
Dennis.
safari with me. Early in the morning we'll be starting out. Some honeys will be coming along. We're loading up our woody with
The bass always climbs like it's going up a ladder the whole time on every chord.
Oh yeah.
And this, see, most people will say, well, that's not Dennis. Yeah, this is Dennis, and it's Dennis on most of it, but that's him singing too, most prominently in the stack. The feel of it.
Yeah.
It's the brothers plus David. And then we'll keep it on until just a little bit of Carl's solo comes.
Go off the
Because
solo.
it's just, you know, and I think he's 15 here. But just the way he attacks the beginning of it here.
Everybody's learning how. Come on a safari with me.
That band. Love. It's good, man.
Yeah, and you know it's funny you say that about the solo because I did notice that while I was listening to the album that you see that like as the solos that they could like you explained it perfectly that they like exploring it. Yeah.
I've learned all those things. You know, it's really cool to listen to. You're listening to a young musician, you know, learning how to play the guitar through these things. Even though he's the feel of that, what we just listened to. That was the strength of it. It wasn't that Dennis is a masterful drummer. It's not that Brian was doing something hard on the bass and Carl. Or you playing power chords on the guitar, and David, it's how they were doing it.
Yeah.
It's the way they were feeling it that was so mature.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, wow. We spent a lot of time on that one.
Yeah, but I think that was good too because especially a song like that is well known and, you know, like unlike I had mentioned in the previous podcast where I didn't know a lot of the songs before I knew this one. So I did want you to kind of go into a little more musically what's going on. And, you know, when you explain the bass in that way that it kind of propels everything and it gives it that feel that, you know, that's, it's like, why do I feel the way I feel when I listen to this? And
it's because Brian is weaving those ideas that it's so funny. It's, you know, music is a feeling too.
Yeah.
And these things are done purposely,
intentionally,
you know,
right?
you know, and it's a really neat study for sure.
Okay, so then let's go to the next song.
Okay, so let's County Fair, which this is recorded at the Capitol Studios. And so you can really hear a different tone in the recordings because of the studios and the different echo chambers. Back then, particular studios really had different characters. When you recorded in them, you could tell when you were recording at Gold Star, it sounded like Gold Star. Western sounded like Western. RCA, and Brian would go to certain places because they sounded certain ways, right? But Capitol, he didn't like the vocal echo chamber too much, and they were signed with Capitol, right? So they're kind of having to record in their studio. So I would just want everybody to know that a lot of these tracks were recorded at Capitol now, which County Fair is. County Fair is an early tune that he wrote with Gary Usher again, the 409 guy. He kind of drafted Usher in when they knew they were going to have to make this record and said, hey, we got to write a bunch of tunes really quick.
Yeah.
You know, let's fill this thing out. So this is one of the things that they come up with. It shows up later, a couple years later. The Beach Boys didn't record it, but Brian produced a group called the Castells. They released it. Actually, the Beach Boys did record it and wasn't released as a song called I Do. And I thought about playing a little bit of snippet of I Do after County Fair so people could just hear the similarities. But, you know, there's not much to the tune.
Yeah, I'd never heard it before. And yeah, I thought that same thing. The Carney voice and the girl, you know, that comes, that's on there. It's
that's David's, I think his aunt.
Oh, okay.
And the carnival barker is Nick Vinay, who signed the Beach Boys.
That's...
Now get this, what I learned from David Sanger on the bus on Asleep at the Wheel. Guess who signed Asleep at the Wheel to Capitol Records in 1971?
Was it
Nick Venet.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that connection. Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's a trip.
Yeah. Very,
all
very
connected there.
Yeah. So, the tune is kind of, you'd say, inconsequential and corny at this point. Right?
Yeah.
But I do
It was
want to
kinda
make
funny,
note
yeah, I
of
thought it was kinda funny.
The compositional aspect of it is it's a stretched out doo-wop progression, meaning that we've talked about this. This is the 1-6-4-5 or 1-6-2-5 that happens not millions of songs. Lots of songs use this progression, but like in this context, right? Yeah, and so here they're just stretch. It's time, dun 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 dun. The county fair comes our way. Da 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 dun da 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 da. So I think that's what it. That's the idea of the progression, or at least for me, that's the way it relates. We're getting far too much into the weeds on county fair.
Okay,
here.
let's move on. 10 Little Indians is next.
That's funny.
So obviously, I don't think the song would be considered PC in today. In the
No,
world we live in today.
Well, and it was. Guess what? It was released as the second single
Oh,
and flopped.
oh, really?
Bad. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I didn't love it myself, but yeah, I don't know. So it didn't do well then.
It's
at that
Brian
time.
and Gary Usher again, and if you listen to the invention, not just the woo 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 woo, but just the way they use the background vocals again, it's about creating a feeling of like an Indian soundscape almost in a pop music sense, and I get some of it. I mean, it's not terrible for me to listen to because I get the. It's the subject matter is weird, but think of Love You.
Well, yeah. No, that's funny. It's like lyrically, I thought that same thing with this one. I'm just like musically, it wasn't bad, but lyrically, you're like, interesting choice of what to put in there lyrically.
There was another hit single around that time called Running Bear. I don't remember too much of it, but there was a lot of like Indian tunes. So it wasn't like they were doing something that nobody else was doing. It was kind of within a trend, right? Should we move on? Is Chug-a-Lug next?
Yep. So,
okay, this is I think a Brian and Mike tune.
So initially, and maybe this is just my ear, and it did feel similar to 10 Little Indians in some way. Okay,
Yeah.
so like same sort of vibe on it.
Yeah, and even a lot of the chord progressions are the same here. Brian's exploring himself as a songwriter, and so recycling himself very much. And so I get what you say, because when I see those two names back to back on my notes over there, I have 10 Little Indians and Chug-a-Lug. I do associate with each other a little bit.
Okay, wasn't off.
Cool thing about Chug-a-Lug is, Mike wrote the lyrics to it, and I like how he kind of checks their personalities at this point in the game. Dennis wonders what's under the hood.
Yeah.
Bryant's still glued to the radio, and Carl says, "Hurry up and order it quick."
Yeah.
Dave gets out to chase that chick.
Yeah.
Boy, is my dyslexia coming out. I can't pronounce a damn thing. And I don't even know if that has anything to do with dyslexia.
Yeah.
This is a fun little tune.
Yeah.
Again, I can't really.
Yeah, I didn't hate it. It was like you said. I think fun little tune is a good way to describe it. Chug-a-Lug. Like, I mean, the name itself is kind of a funny name. Fun name. So
Yeah. And again, we're getting Carl exploring that minor pentatonic thing for his guitar solos. You listen to the guitar solos that Carl plays on the record, and you're gonna go, well, that sounds a lot like the last one. Well, that's because he's playing a lot of his same ideas and trying to change them a little bit, but he doesn't have a giant toolbox to work with at this point. You know?
Yeah.
So it's just always curious to listen to the solos throughout. The next tune is the one the one of note that.
Yeah, we get a different pace on this one.
Well, and this is written by. Have you ever heard of Herb Alpert? The famous horn player, and many famous records. Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. They made many famous records in the 60s, and he ended up owning A&M Records, which is who bought the catalog from Murray in '69.
Oh.
And anyway, but he wasn't working for Capitol. I think he had already started his own deal at this point. But this was a Herb Alpert tune. which is crazy. There's a Herb Alpert tune on the first Beach Boy album.
So this is
Not a Brian tune.
This is not a Brian.
No,
So
this is somebody else's tune, but I don't think it's a cover. I think this is just a tune that Herb Alpert had and the Beach Boys recorded. And even stranger, Brian says, "Hey, Dennis, go ahead and sing this baby." Considered the quote weakest singer of the bunch at this, on the very first record. Hey, why don't you sing this little crooner ballad on here? But he had the perfect kind of attitude for it.
Yeah.
I love the way he sings it.
Yeah. Should we play this one or?
Yeah, you could play a little bit of the front end. It's another kind of a stretched out doo-wop. It's a doo-wop progression, just in a different rhythm. But it's definitely it's interesting to listen to for Dennis's vocal for sure. Yeah. Kind of sloppy on the front for the background stuff, though. And some of the rhythm is out of sync, but phrasing is great. He's a little late, but it's on purpose. It's got feel to it.
You're so sweet, you're so fine. Dear, won't you be mine? Everybody knows.
Even that, wow, was really. Anyway.
Yeah, it is cool to hear Dennis like that, though.
Yeah, and very early on, when people, these documentaries that sing the praises of the Wrecking Crew that all want to basically paint Dennis as never having played the drums and was a terrible singer and wasn't even singing on the Beach Boy albums or whatever like that. And, well, that's just bullshit because he was singing and singing well on the very first one and played drums on the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. People just not knowing.
Yeah.
So then we get into...
Then it's 409, which is...
And so, obviously, 409 has the hook, it has that catchy thing, and most people know 409.
Right. Remember, this was one of the ones at Western, so it has a different sound. Now
sounds.
Again, it's
And you can
tighter,
tell.
and then
You
you
can
go, oh wow,
absolutely tell.
Surfin' Safari and 409, they're muscular. There's some, a lot more dense tracks.
So, other than the catchy hook, what else is going on musically?
Well, I love I don't think we've told the story about how they got the car sound on the front end of it.
No, I don't think.
Oh yeah, so that's Gary's car, and it wasn't a 409, but it was a Chevy 390, something like that. And they did it about 2:00 in the morning, and Brian took his tape recorder out to the street right in front of the Wilson brothers' house, and they got that going, and then Gary just revved it up as loud as he could and took off down the street, and they did it a couple times, and pretty soon the whole neighborhood and everybody was pissed and wondering what was going on, but that's how they got
no kidding
the car sounds on the front. I always thought that was probably a stock Capitol Records thing. They probably had that noise and put it on the front of there, and then, nope, they did that. Got it and did it in the middle of the night and pissed people off.
That's hilarious. That just shows. I love hearing stuff like that of them just like being like those. That's kids, like that's teenagers right there. Who cares?
They're loving every minute of it.
Yeah, exactly.
This musically, it's just another what we call a altered 12-bar blues thing, but there's not a whole bunch going on in it. It's giddy up for the one chord, and here comes the 4 chord predictably. Giddy up back to the 1. And see, this is just every standard 12-bar. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So it's not even an altered 12-bar blues. It's just Brian's wrote another 12-bar. It's like Johnny Be Good. Way down in Louisiana, close to New Orleans. Exact same chord progression. Listen to it. Just a little bit different melody and the words.
Yeah, okay.
It's the same musical form, maybe in a different key or something like that.
Right.
Now, there's not much except for, again, and there's that video we did where I try to copy Carl's guitar solo on the fiddle. But I love Carl's solo and the tone. We need to pull 409 up, and maybe if we can get it to the middle where Carl's solo comes in. But I always thought as a kid the guitar, that's a Stratocaster, folks, and it almost sounds like a banjo to me.
Huh.
On 409 specifically, not Surfin' Safari. They must add some weird tone going on.
Okay, so I'm going to try to scrub over to...
Yeah, you might have to
middle-ish
edit a
area.
little bit
Yeah,
of it.
that's okay.
Yeah. There's...
Oh,
She's real fine, my
That's awesome.
409. She's
All right,
real
we'll move
fine,
over a little
my
bit here.
And then do you hear the car going by the house
Oh,
there?
yeah, sorry.
Okay, back it up just
Back
a little bit. Yeah, because it... Okay, now when the guitars... Now listen to this solo gets going. Tell me if it's plunky like a banjo. Especially here. I thought that was a banjo when I was a little kid.
Oh.
There's the car going by. Yeah.
Because of the pluckiness, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, kind of just... I didn't sound like an electric guitar to me.
So that's more...
When I was a kid.
That's more, yeah, totally.
There was just a different, they had a different amp setting going on and whatever. But so that's basically 409. Then I think we're to
Surfing, yep.
which is just the original single but sped up.
Okay.
So they put in. This is either the end of side 1 or the beginning of side 2. But so this was not recorded at Western or Capitol. It was recorded at World Pacific.
Right.
So that's another reason why some of the cuts sound, they sound so different because they're all in different studios.
And so, yeah, we already talked about this one, so we can
Being
probably
redundant.
so we can just keep pressing on. So
Yeah.
now, Heads You Win, Tails I Lose.
Another Brian and Gary Escher tune written to get the album made, right?
Right.
But this is the one where they've got a really cool thing going on in the beginning of the intro goes like this. It's kind of the California Girls and Don't Hurt My Little Sister idea. It's just something, and you interpret it as this time it's this key, not just a chord, almost a key change, and then finally, and they're in A. But what does that also sound like physically to you? A coin flip.
Oh.
And then the choruses they use, heads you win, tails you lose, heads you win, tails you lose, bad news. I think the music is set up to emulate a coin flip, and especially that little intro.
Getting some...
Because you've got that's a fourth, a distance of a fourth, which is pretty, almost the other side of the coin musically. You know what I mean? But it does feel like a flip to
And you
me.
think this was intentional?
I'm thinking so, yeah.
I mean, if it is...
Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah, so
wild.
play the
actual
track.
song,
Yeah, it's and it's also a really the musical idea on the front is
starting to see some
unorthodox,
Well,
and just outside of the.
Are we really starting to see some depth
Not
here?
it's at least just a funny little out of the box
Out
trick.
of the box. Okay.
Yeah.
Every time we have a fight, we flip a coin to see who's right. Why do we have to gamble just to see who's right? Why can't we arbitrarily
When you
resolve
get to the
a
chorus,
fight?
it kind of happens
When you
again
start a
because
feeling there's a
I'll show you how it
chance
feels to me.
That's how it is and that's the way it's always been. Heads you win, tails I lose. Heads you win, tails I lose. Bad news.
Okay.
If we were playing
Anyway.
cards, we'd be the one to deal. We play with loaded dice and fix.
That might be a lot of reading into things for me, but at least that's the way the music feels to me, regardless of that's what was done intentionally anyway.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's a cool perspective of it, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was cool to hear that because I didn't hear that at all. I liked the tune, but yeah. Then we move into Summertime Blues,
Which is a cover.
which is a cover. Which
Of
is what I thought.
is Eddie Cochran tune. I don't know how old it had been at this point, but I'm sure that Carl and Dave especially were big fans because it was a guitar tune, a guitar hit of the day. And so this, even though a lot of times Beach Boy historians say Carl's first lead vocal was not until the Summer Days album on Girl Don't Tell Me. On the first album, he's singing the melody here, and I think it's David singing harmony. So it's the 15 and the 13-year-old kid. It sounds pretty ragged, but I'm pretty positive it's Carl on the melody, which would make him technically the lead singer on this track.
Oh, interesting.
So this is Carl's first lead.
Oh.
To, you know, and then he has one on Shutdown Volume 2, Pom Pom Playgirl, that we've talked about. But anyway, yeah, play a little bit of the opening of this. I mean, the vocals are pretty rough.
Yeah, well, you know what's funny is this song. This was one of the songs that was on my dad's greatest hits album that I had. So I knew, yeah,
really,
yeah. So I knew this one, and I always liked this one too. I've actually caught myself singing this song like just over my life because it was something that I always heard as a kid.
But you've probably heard the original version
maybe,
by
yeah.
Eddie Cochran.
I guess that's possible.
I'll bet you that was on your dad's thing as opposed to the Beach Boys cover of it.
I need to find the exact copy of what my dad had.
That would be
still have it.
I don't know if this is kind of a outside track on the very first album that everybody wants to forget about. You know what I mean? Or
well, and like I said, it was the album was the compilation that my dad had was the Beach Boys' greatest surfer hits. So I don't know if Summertime Blues fell into that category, but yeah, let's throw it on here real quick.
It's pretty sloppy track wise too.
I'm gonna raise a buzz, I'm gonna raise a holler. About to working all summer just to try to earn a dollar.
When you know it's a 15 and 13-year-old, it doesn't sound too bad. Mike.
You gotta work late. Sometimes I wonder what I'm gonna do, but there ain't no cure for the summertime blues.
No, and actually re-listening to this, it's guaranteed that takes me back to my childhood. So that was on.
That's the version. Okay,
yeah, that was
cool.
the version that was on, which is so random. Like I said, I want to get that just so I know. I need to get that from
the first reissue of Surfin' Safari in the 90s on CD had that vocal listed as Brian and Mike.
Oh.
And I already, well, that's not right.
Okay, so what? Cuckoo Clock?
Yes, another. This is another Brian and Gary Usher tune. That there's funny stories about this. That I guess Murray had a pet mynah bird, and they did something with a cuckoo clock to annoy Murray.
Oh,
Gary and Brian did or something, and so this song was almost written in homage to that moment that they pissed Murray off. And so but there are some. My brother John loves this tune.
Oh.
There's something about it musically. It got the little cuckoo hook in the middle of it. Just kind of for some reason he's I gotta dig that, and I can get that too. Songs are gonna resonate for
yeah. This one did not resonate with me. That was probably my least favorite on the album. I did like there's organ in there. Is that what?
Yeah.
I did like that part. That was.
I think that's probably Brian there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the ones that I actually will listen to on the album when I do listen to the Surfin' Safari album. Moondawg, we want to talk about that?
Yeah, let's talk
cover.
That's a cover.
It was done earlier, maybe just not very long before this, by a group called the Gamblers.
Okay.
And it was an instrumental. Guess who was in the Gamblers?
Who's that?
Bruce Johnston.
Oh, no kidding. Nice.
So you want to know how's Bruce? Well, he was already making it before the Beach Boys were even started, because they got started in '61, right? He was in a group that made a surf record that the Beach Boys covered on their first album.
Wow.
So it's all
tied. It's all tied. Yep. It's all weaving.
And it's a cool tune.
So I guess compared to the original, because they bring in the dog barking, cool harmonies. Is that the kind of their touch on it, or
I think don't get me to lying. I don't know. I maybe have heard the original. I need to look.
Okay.
I need to look that up. But I think there are some elements of that.
In the original
one too, and there's some some that think that Carl's not actually playing the lead guitar thing on here. They think either Nick Venet or a guy, maybe Derry Weaver, which might have been a fictitious name for Nick. I don't know. But I still think it sounds like Carl.
Yeah.
And musically, it's got some cool things going on. There's a modulation in it, and the whole Bruce connection. But then you go to the shift right after that, which is the last song, which is about it's a dress that girls were wearing at the time. It's got a really unusual thing going on musically. Again, it's primarily in A, but they make it sound as if it starts on a G chord, and that feels like the key to be good. Dun 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 with the new dress on. Then to A, wearing the shift. So it sounds like we've come out of G. It sounds like we're going to a 2 chord, but then we go to a D chord, which would be the 5. But then we're back to the A. Oh wow, that sounds like the new home. And then we go to the E, which now that's the 5 of the 4, and back to the 1. And then back to G. It's crazy. It's almost, if it is an A, then we're starting on the flat 7 chord and moving to the 1 and everything. But I almost think Brian looked at it as an extended form where he was just doing a brief modulation in the key of G to start the form and then go to A major right after it. And just, it's nuts.
Yeah.
And he makes it work.
Yeah. Okay, so then that's the album.
That's the Surfin'
That's
Safari
the
album.
Safari album.
August 1962 is when they recorded it, just over a few days, the balance of what they had to do, right? Surfin' Safari was done, 409 was done, Surfin' was done, so they just had to do another 7 or 8 tunes or whatever. So they did that. The album's released in the United States. Okay, Surfin' Safari went pretty high as a single. I can't remember exactly what it was, but top 20.
Uh-huh.
But the album went to number 32, very first album. And the UK, it didn't chart, but I don't know if if Surfin' Safari was even released in the UK. If it was a long time after that. But anyway, it did fairly well, and they had their first album under their belt, but then had grown significantly. They were also been touring a lot, and in the end of 1962 had gotten better as musicians, and they got ready to record the Surfin' USA album in early, like January of 63.
And Surfin' USA, and then so that'll be the next album that we'll do in the next episode.
Yes.
Perfect. That was fun. That was cool, man. I love getting the dynamic of you picking up the guitar and showing it.
I just wish I talked better.
And then listening.
I mean,
hey, come on. Don't talk down on yourself.
And I do get excited, and I miss a lot of things. And then I can even think while I'm explaining stuff, I'm thinking I could have explained that better.
No, you're doing great. Honestly, especially to someone I don't know when you're talking about, like, I can hear differences, but I don't really know what's going on. So no, you're doing great. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
We will get into Surfin' USA in the next album, and we'll break it down just like we did this one. So thank you always for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.